He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
No mai whakarongo mai ki te Aotai whenua. Welcome to Country Life. I'm Sally Round.
Great to have your company. I'm Duncan Smith. Today we see what an injection of foreign investment is doing for Hawke's Bay's apple industry.
And I'm taking you to meet a young family in their first year on the farm.
Later on we head to a Golden Bay farm with its own abattoir, selling paddock to plate beef and lamb via its online shop.
But first, to a look at what's been making headlines on the Rural News Desk this week. Fonterra's moving to further reduce its emissions, converting its dairy factory near Timaru to run on wood pellets instead of coal. It's the country's biggest emitter and expects the $64 million spend will lead to a 9% reduction in its overall emissions. Fonterra turned off the last coal boiler in the North Island last month at Waitoa, and Clandeboyle is the first of 6 sites in the South Island to convert. Here's Chief Operating Officer Anna Palleray.
We have a program that is prioritising which boilers we convert, and part of that decision-making process is the age of those boilers and the need to invest in them at certain times along the path between now and 2037, which is our target of getting out of all coal.
Ms Palleray says Fonterra wants to establish a wood biomass supply in the South Island as it converts from coal at its other sites.
Hot, dry conditions in Canterbury and Hawke's Bay have firefighters busy already. There have been several large vegetation fires in the south, and with hot winds drying out pasture, farmers say it feels more like February than December. Sheep and beef farmers are offloading stock early, and dairy farmers are buying in more feed to get through. North Canterbury Federated Farmers President Carl Dean says there's been a lot more northwest winds than normal for this time of the year.
For the sheep and beef guys, they're definitely offloading lambs and that a bit earlier than normal, especially up in the hills. Making sure that they're not going to be caught short. In terms of the dairy farmers and all that, they're probably buying in a bit more feed than normal to realise that there's the risk they're going to need it.
Federated Farmers is urging the Commerce Commission to investigate banks for what it sees as cartel-like behaviour. BNZ, ANZ, Westpac, Rabobank and ASB's parent company are part of the global Net Zero Banking Alliance, which requires bank clients to meet emissions reduction targets in order to get lower interest rates. Here's Federated Farmers Banking spokesperson Richard McIntyre.
In my view, it's just woke virtue signalling. But now that we're in a position where they're all doing it, you've really got to question whether or not it is cartel-like behaviour, and that's why we've put this complaint into the Commerce Commission, because we think it's really worth investigating, for the good of New Zealand's farmers, but also for the good of the New Zealand economy. Richard
McIntyre says many farmer clients may not be able to meet the targets, but they have no other option but to borrow from one of the big 5 banks. BNZ Chair Warwick Hunt refuted such claims at the government's inquiry into banking competition this week.
We do not restrict credit at the present point in time. We set very, very large-scale whole-of-entity targets that we then report against, specifically under our external reporting standard.
The Commerce Commission says it's aware of Federated Farmers' complaint, but it would be premature to comment on whether any laws are being breached.
Zespri kiwifruit growers have overwhelmingly voted in support of increasing sungold plantings in other countries. Zespri wanted to extend its global supply by up to 420 hectares over 6 years across Italy, France, South Korea and Greece to ensure it can provide fruit to customers all year round. The expansion of international plantings will begin next year.
New Zealand's dairy cows are getting better and better at pumping out more milk. Dairy NZ has released stats for the year ending June, which show a record average of 400 kilograms of milk solids a cow. 20.5 billion litres of milk was produced, with milk solids up a slight 0.5% on the previous season. Dairy NZ Chief Executive Campbell Parker says herd sizes have dropped in the past decade, but production per cow has increased.
things like genetics, continuing to breed for better producing and better efficient animals. So there's a real focus on that across the sector as well at the moment, around balancing up, environmental outcomes as well as productive performance. So, there's a lot of investment into technology.
Stats NZ's latest agricultural production survey shows the amount of land used to farm livestock or grow crops, grapes or forests continues to decline. The number of farms in Aotearoa has dropped by a third in the decade to 2022 to more than 47,000 farms as urban sprawl encroaches into rural areas.
A stone fruit company is hoping new varieties of apricots will lengthen the season and enable greater export volumes to key markets. Grower cooperative NZ Summer Fresh has commercial rights to 5 new cultivars bred in New Zealand, including Summer Spark and Summer Charm. I'm spotting a theme here. Chairman and grower Stephen Darling says when production ramps up in the next few years, they want to tap into new markets like Thailand, Singapore and Vietnam.
We're looking to be harvesting some of these exciting new ones sort of from about mid-late February through almost into March, which is when most of the rest of the world's run out. So I think there's a great opportunity for the timing of these ones as well as the great taste profile.
And tributes are flowing for Canterbury farmer Chris Allen, who died on his farm on Monday. Mr Allen was the Mid-Canterbury Federated Farmers Meat and Wool Chair, then President, before joining the National Board in 2014. Federated Farmers Chief Executive Terry Copeland says during his 8 years' service in that role, Mr Allen made his mark as biodiversity and freshwater spokesperson. He says farmers have lost a real titan in terms of rural advocacy. His death has been referred to the coroner.
This is Country Life on RNZ National 101 FM.
It's been a tough few years for Hawke's Bay's apple industry. From severe labour shortages during the COVID-19 pandemic to successive years of bad weather and then last year's Cyclone Gabrielle. But there's hope for the future. Craigmore Sustainables has added several Hawke's Bay orchards to its horticulture portfolio in recent months. The Rural Investment Agency manages more than 33,000 hectares of dairy, grazing, forestry and horticulture land around New Zealand. Its business manager of development, who oversees its orchards in Hawke's Bay and Gisborne, says the foreign investment is much needed.
I'm Shane Flynn, business manager of development at Craigmore. So I look after our newly acquired apple orchards on the Heretaunga Plains, Central Hawke's Bay and Gisborne. Craigmore is a pilot to bring in overseas investment in the apple business, focused in on areas where we can help the region and help the economics within the region. One of our first ventures was in Central Hawke's Bay as well as Gisborne. Now we're focusing in the Heretaunga Plains as well and just bringing in some foreign investment, some well-needed capital into the industry to allow the industry to thrive and keep growing as it needs to.
Can you talk to me about some of the recent acquisitions? It feels like every other week we're hearing about Craigmore, lots of development going across here. It's
spreading its risk across horticulture and agriculture with the different funds that it's providing opportunities for. As we continue to grow and invest into one crop, we look at another crop and make sure that we reduce that risk, but also continue to grow and establish our apple business, our grape business, our kiwi fruit business. Yeah. We're standing in a new orchard that we've just purchased in June, and we're currently looking at a new planting of rocket. We've developed about 21 hectares in this orchard in the last 2 or 3 months, historically in old Royal Gala, and we've put in 21 hectares of rocket, dazzle and Prem A47 into new structures and new planting systems.
Can you tell me a little bit about the block here? So what kind of varieties were growing and why have you maybe transitioned away from some of them?
The 21 hectares that we're standing in now was all in Royal Gala, which is a tried and true variety for growers and everyone across New Zealand, if not the world, knows raw gala, but unfortunately its cost of production now is outweighing the returns. So as we need to keep evolving and changing and listening to what the markets are after, we have had to redevelop 3 of the newer varieties that we've got in front of us today.
And what is it you're seeing in those varieties that's made you transition to them? That's where the market's heading for? What are consumers looking for in their fruits?
Red, point of difference. Rocket obviously is a smaller apple, more of a snack apple. Not the norm, I guess. We're needing to keep changing and evolving and listening to the consumer, so something that's different attracts a premium price in some shape or form.
We're here at this new block that you guys are developing. Can you talk me through for our listeners what we're looking at in terms of the infrastructure that is involved in setting up a new orchard site and why you guys have chosen this particular setup?
I guess there's been a lot of changes in the industry in the last 10 years, so we've gone from roughly 1,000 to 1,500 trees per hectare to now we're looking at close to 2.5 to, in some areas here, 3,500 trees per hectare. And with that, root systems are a lot smaller and require a lot more support. So the support structures, posts and wires, and the trellising system is beefed up compared to what we had 20 years ago.
So the 3 wires running across. And
Yeah, so they need that extra support, and with that has come extra production. So in terms of the industry, averages I think have been, historically 30, 40, 50 tonne a hectare. We're hopefully looking at this when it's in full production will be 90, 100, 110, 120 tonne a hectare. So we've certainly continually learning and evolving in how we're doing things.
Just looking at it to describe it for our audience members, we've got posts every 5 metres or so?
9.6 metres.
9.6 posts every 9.6 metres, and there's the 3 wires running across as the supports. There's irrigation, the trees, which are obviously still very, very young, maybe a metre high or so, would you say?
Exactly a metre. The rows have actually closed up over the last 10, 15 years. We're historically 4.5 metres. We're looking here at a 3 metre row spacing. The trees haven't filled the gap yet, but certainly in terms of automation and harvesting, we're trying to future-proof that. What that looks like is yet to be proven though.
You can't help driving around Hawke's Bay but pass through or pass by orchards that were obviously quite badly affected by the cyclone, and we've seen some of the blocks owned by Craigmore as well that were the same. Has, out of the bad that was the cyclone, have there been new opportunities to move the industry forward, to move with some of these trends you're seeing?
Yeah, certainly. So there's varieties that everyone is looking at investing in, taking a cautious approach because they're somewhat new and maybe unproven. Although the cyclone was extremely devastating, there are or has forced us to look at innovations, different planting techniques, different ways that we produce a crop, looking at different technologies, equipment, and looking for innovations in that sense, because we can't just continue to do the norm. As our labour costs increase, we need to look at different ways to increase production, reduce cost, and be world leaders in growing apples.
Was it quite hard sourcing some of the new trees, given particularly the number of people who would have been looking to replant post-cyclone?
So we order either 2 years or 1 year in advance, so the nurseries are well aware of what's coming. But yes, certainly the people that came straight in after the cyclone and wanted to replant was what destruction they might have had, put a little bit more pressure on the system, but prior to that there was quite a bit of planting happening, so I guess the nurseries were ready for it in some shape or form because it had slightly dropped off prior to the cyclone.
Where do you think the industry might be headed? What are some of the potential opportunities that might exist?
Automation and harvesting. If we can get people off ladders and platforms and able to have some kind of picker that picks all the fruit for us. It would be great to see. I think that's still quite a few years away, but there's certainly different innovations that we're looking at sprayers, fruit counting, all sorts of ways that we could be improving before we get to that next level of automation and harvesting.
What are some of the challenges for the industry?
Capital constraint is quite significant. To set up something like this is probably north of $200,000 a hectare. Then you've got 2 to 3 years worth of growing costs before you actually start returning a crop. So yeah, the need for foreign investment as well as investment from New Zealanders is extremely important for our industry.
Is there a bit of pushback, or is it difficult in an industry, when people think about corporates or they think about some of these larger businesses? Obviously the investment is really important, but do you find that there's a bit of a tension within the industry around that?
I think for the greater good of the industry, everyone's on board and wants to see us all thrive. I think we've got to remember the grower ultimately pays for most of it along the way, so that need for the investment comes in all facets across the fully integrated business. But yeah, the grower needs the support from the industry, really. Yeah.
As someone who's been in the industry a long time, when you look at this new development that's still going on, especially when, it's been, before the cyclone, it had been a few hard years for the industry. We've been reading for years about people pulling out blocks. How do you feel when you see this new development happening?
Oh, it's exciting. It's good to see further investment within the industry and people willing to still have a go, even though we've faced a number of challenges over the last 3 or 4 years. Although the cyclone has proved to be one of the most challenging things we've faced, I think there's going to be some good that comes out of it in the way we look at doing things for the future.
That was Shane Flynn of Craigmore Sustainables speaking to Janina Schwannecker.
We hear a lot about the ageing farmer workforce in New Zealand and the ups and downs of farming in general. So what's it like for a couple beginning their farming journey in these difficult times? I'm taking you to Northland, not too far inland from where a river valley meets Doubtless Bay. Heading out for a farm walk with Trent and Tiki Garton and their 2 small children, Saoirse and Mac, to see how they got there and the road ahead.
Now we're going for a walk.
We're going to go for a walk, mate.
Can you take Luna?
Nah, that's all right. We'll come back together.
I probably should have grabbed something a bit warmer.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. We mostly do dairy grazers, but we're a beef farm also. So we have a lot of Frisian bulls on and do people's dairy grazing. We sort of take them on at a young age, run them right through to before they go back for calvings.
And you just sent some off today, sent some back. Are they all nice and fat and ready for the next season?
Yeah, up to weight and in calf, so they've gone back to farm. And
that was back in June, on a warm and sunny day in early winter. Trent grew up here, but Tiki is new to farming life.
We're just heading on to what we call the flats, or the flood flats.
How big is the farm?
It's 135 hectares. So the back of the farm is quite a pretty little valley, more hill country, and then we've got the flats down here which do flood, but they're very fertile because of the flooding. It brings down the sediment, and so they're brilliant for rearing stock or cropping or anything.
And you border a river?
Yes, yeah, so the Oruru River, and where our farm borders the river is a Goldilocks or a sweet spot or a love spot, depending on who you're talking to, for inanga spawning. So we've actually done a bit of conservation work with Doc and Whitebait Connection. They come down and they create sort of artificial spawning sites for them, and then they come out and measure what's come up and spawned and things like that, which recently they called to let us know that they did find some spawning, which is great. The next stage is planting out in vegetation to sort of encourage more spawning, as well as more fencing, and also some culvert remediation work so that the natural waterways stays intact for the fish to pass through and get to where they need to spawn.
We've come to a puddle.
Big jump. His boots are already wet inside from being left in the rain, so it doesn't matter if he goes in the deep one, which is nice.
You do a bit of cropping as well?
Yes, yeah. We grow about 16 hectares of maize for feed. So it goes on to go into stock food and to calf meal and whatnot. So one of the local guys in town buy it all off us, and yeah, we probably should be grazing more stock, but it's something we love to do, so we crop.
So you've come into this game from a completely different area, freestyle motocross. You were a champion in New Zealand and riding on the international stage as well.
Yes, yeah, I travelled around the world and all over the country doing freestyle motocross, yeah. About 8 years I probably rode professionally. It's something that'll never leave me. I'll always be part of, but farming is where we're at the moment, and we'll come back to it, so yeah.
But you grew up here, didn't you?
Yes.
This is a family farm.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about the history of the place.
1878 it came into the family. It was leased back then off the butlers, and then as time went on, the family bought the farm.
So Trent's farming blood goes back a long way.
Trent is the 5th generation on the farm, following in the footsteps of his ancestors William and Emma Garton. He says luckily he was the only one of his siblings wanting to farm, which can be a sticking point for farm succession. In the end, though, the farm was put on the market, and Trent and Tiki managed to buy it.
So how does it feel now to be the owner of the land?
Amazing. December last year, we finally managed to buy the property, and it's a very proud moment for us. Something that we've sort of wanted to happen forever. It's what I've always wanted to do my whole life. The opportunity for this is incredible.
But it's been a tough road to get here.
Oh yes, yeah. There's nothing easy about it. That's for sure. It's had a huge amount of challenges.
How do you explain to people you're not just given a farm on a plate when it comes to succession?
Yes, we were definitely not given the farm at all. It was very hard for us to purchase the property, and it's been a very hard time to get to where we are now. It's a very common thing we found out with the farm successions with family. These properties that have been handed through generations or come through generations. I shouldn't say handed, because a lot of these properties aren't. The next generation has bought it just like they would buy any other property, and sometimes it can be a lot harder.
That's a good spot to throw things in.
Wow,
we have to resale just this bit. Yeah. So a whole day's worth.
As a kid, what would you do on the farm? What did you used to do?
Everything. Ride bikes. All over it. Yeah, it was the best playground as a kid. You couldn't ask for a better place. It was freedom. You know, everything from hunting and fishing and trapping and hiking, and we all rode, me and the neighbours, we rode motocross bikes and quads, and we swam in the rivers, and it was the most enchanting place as a kid growing up. You know, you couldn't ask for a better place. We had native bush around us, and it was a playground.
Back in June, 6 months in, Tiki was working off-farm part-time, and things were going along well.
It was, the banks like to see a bit of off-farm income that's not reliant on seasons. They're not relying on the beef prices or the dairy payout or crop prices and things like that. But we're at a point whether or not it's viable for me to continue, because I travel to Kaitaia, and
I guess a lot of your friends who are farming, young like yourselves, it must be something they have to consider.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, a lot of, even talking to our banker about it, our bank manager, and he even says, he goes both sides of it, saying he's like, it's a steady income for you, and if you can juggle both, then that's great. But at the same time, he wants us to be farming, and we want to be farming, and I'm late to the farming game. I wasn't brought up farming, but it's go for it, Mac.
We have come to an enormous puddle.
Go down the middle, honey.
Well, there have been quite a few changes since that conversation, and when I put in a call to Tiki this week, she said it had been a rocky road these past few months. Beef cattle have been fetching such high prices, they lost 60% of the herd they were grazing, as the owner was keen to get them to market. There's been so much feed around after a good spring, people needing grazing are in short supply. So Tiki gave up her job and went full pelt into calf rearing, something she'd never done before, feeding 330 calves single-handedly. Trent has had to go off farm too to do jobs in his field of engineering, as well as keep the farm going.
What advice do you have for anybody else in your situation?
Hang in there. Everything's possible. It's just hang in there, because even though it's a hard time to get into farming and with everything as it is, but I think it is worth it to keep some of these blocks, keep these old farms going. Definitely get yourself a good farm consultant, a good accountant, and find the right bank manager. We were very lucky with the bank manager and accountant that we ended up with. They believed in our story and what we were doing.
Farming's tough these days, though, isn't it?
Oh, it's incredibly
the
tough,
inputs are high.
Yes, yeah.
And you've got high interest rates to cope with as well.
Hugely high interest rates, and like you said, the inputs with the fertiliser costs and grass seed and even running costs with your tractors and everything else are through the roof. But we're chipping away. We just take one day at a time and do the best we can, and we work night and day and 24 hours in a day, and we try to use the whole lot 7 days a week. But I think that's part of farming. It's not work, it's a lifestyle. You get up every day and you love what you do, so you do it.
Do you want to get back on that bike every so often just to...
I do. Oh, very much so. Definitely blow the cobwebs out. The bike is something I dream of quite a lot, and it's something I will get back into, but there's time. There's always time.
Trent, what are your plans for the farm?
To get it to a sustainable level where I don't have to do off-farm work or have other lease blocks or whatnot. It's to grow the farm. It's to set it up for the next generation and learn from the mistakes of the past. It's to me, I think it's more about these kids than myself.
Planning ahead for succession for your own kids, what ideas have you got?
It is a hard one because we don't know what the future's going to hold. Once we get sort of past this first year or two of owning the farm, we're planning on, and we've already talked to our lawyer about going and sitting down and trying to map out certain things that will protect our children from something happening in the future to upset the apple cart. I'm not sure how to say it. We'll make it as easy for our kids as we can.
At the end of the day, the next generation, it's their choice.
It's their choice.
If they want to carry on farming or do whatever they want, it's their decision. It's not ours. But we want to make it possible for them to farm and for this farm to go onto them. That's, I think, our responsibility here. Yeah.
And how will you make it so that you will also be able to have a living while they're taking on the farm?
I guess that's
the difficulty, isn't it?
That's the difficulty, but I think that's what we try to cover in the next, 20, 30 years. Yeah.
I was speaking there to Trent and Tiki Garton of Kainamu Farm in Northland.
Hi, my name is Des. I live beside the Uara River, and you're listening to Country Life on RNZ National.
Farm to Fork champions sustainability, animal welfare and forging a connection between producer and consumer. The movement is at the core of how things are done at Alice Creek Farm, near the Abel Tasman National Park in Golden Bay. The farm's business model is focused on growing, processing and selling Angus beef, lamb and farm produce direct to the public. The historic farm that once was home to the South Island's first winery is run by Rose and Andy Williams. Rose's brother, Jonathan Thorpe, is part of the farming team, and he's out on the property with Cosmo Kentish Barnes.
My grandparents bought the farm in 1939. And my father took over the farm in the early 1960s. And so my grandfather farmed 30 dairy cows, and then my father went more into sheep farming. So we've always had a bit of a mix. And then when Rose and Andy took over, they wanted to go more with the lowline Angus, and as a family we decided to establish the Ellis Creek Farm brand as a way of seeking to maintain the farm and keep it in the family. And as you can see, there's a lot of bush and steep rock faces and scrub covered hills. So yeah, it's hard work.
We are standing on a gravel road now, which goes up the hill into the bush, and looking down the other way, we can see the estuary and a bit of the sea.
Yeah, there's the Motopapa estuary, and the Golden Bay stretches out in front of us. Yeah, we often sit up here and watch the westerly blowing across the other side of the bay, and if you look at the rainfall statistics, you know, Bainham on the other side probably has 2 or 3 times what we have. So we're in the centre of the farm, looking in at the finishing cattle, and these would be 18 months to 2 years. So they're a low-line Angus, particularly bred for their short, stocky nature. They've got a high beef to bone ratio, I suppose you'd call it. And with the hilly country here, we felt that a breed like this would be more robust on the hills.
Yes. And so these cattle are killed on farm, aren't they?
Yes. Yeah, we've got our own abattoir. That was a process that took quite a while to get over the line and get built. And for Rose and Andy, it's been a big motivation to be able to see the animals not have to go onto a truck. We care for them, and to put them on a truck and have the stress of travelling hours to get to an abattoir, we really didn't want to continue on in that way.
There's lots of tucker there in the paddock for them to munch on.
Yes, and we're still topping them up with baleage as part of that finishing off process.
Yes. And surrounding the paddock that these low lines are in is lots of dense native bush.
Yeah, I came back to the farm about 5 years ago to help establish and support Mum and Dad who are here, and I'm still finding corners of the farm that I've never been to before as I get in there to fix a fence or sort out a water supply.
Now, Rose has just turned up. We were going to walk down and meet you at the cow sheds, but we got stuck yarning here beside the low lines.
Yes.
How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
What's happening on the farm at the moment?
The grass is growing, and we're raising calves, both on their mothers and also from the dairy farm that have been brought over here, and we're putting them on our milking cows. We have 9 milking cows.
So do you milk some of those cows?
We milk 1 cow to feed all of us, and the other cows, we put the calves on them twice a day, and the calves just help themselves.
And so how many people are living, on the farm at the moment?
Jonathan, you did a count up.
Yeah, we had, I think it was around 18.
Yeah. Some of them are just coming and going. Yeah. We have about 8 family at the moment. Most of our children have moved on, but yeah.
And how much land does this farm cover?
It's just under 500 acres, 200 hectares.
And only about half of it is in grazable land, perhaps less.
We've got 2 or 3 lease blocks, which is flatter land, which is better for finishing the cattle.
But they're just small properties, mostly retired people own around our farm. Yeah.
And as well as being a farmer, Rose, you've been doing a bit of relief teaching this morning.
I have. I'm not doing very much at the moment because I'm far too busy, but it's always nice to get out there and see the children.
Yes. Yeah. Good to do something different.
It is nice to do something different every now and then.
Well, should we wander down the hill and have a look at your calves?
Yeah.
We've just passed a tiny house. Who lives there?
That's my house truck, and we've got a young family staying there short term. They're helping out a little bit with some of the pasture care. So Rose would be able to share a bit more about that perhaps.
tell me more,
Well,
Rose.
we're really keen to work on, as much as we can, restoring the microbiology of the soil. And one of the techniques for doing that, other than buying stuff in, is to build your own indigenous microorganisms from your environment and build up your supply of those. And one way of doing that is the Korean natural farming way. And it's something that I'm really interested in, but Elliot is also very interested in it. And he was needing somewhere to stay, and he was wanting to develop and experiment with his skills. So he's staying here for a few months, and he's going to have a go at working with us on restoring some of our poorer paddocks.
So this is called Korean natural farming.
Yeah.
I've never heard that before.
Well, have you heard of bokashi?
Yes.
Bokashi comes from similar roots, but it's a version of compost teas, really. But instead of building your compost pile and hoping that all the good fungi and bacteria just move in, you go out into your environment and you find a wild place where the soil is very rich with fungi and microorganisms, and then you collect them and you increase the volume of them, and then you take that back out into your garden or onto your paddocks. So it's actually mostly used in small-scale gardens, and there's not many farmers using it on the large scale.
But there's no reason why you can't upscale, I guess.
No, well, I was inspired by a farmer called Tom Stack who lives in Ireland, and he's taken it up and he's doing it on his dairy farm, and he's really sold on it. So a lot of the restoration happens in the way that you would be grazing.
Yep.
If you're not grazing really short and you're not blasting it with chemicals, then you're more likely to have a healthy soil microbe.
Now I see an old International tractor has been parked up on the side of the track. I guess that would have been your dad's.
Yes, that one's done a few miles. Lifted a few trees and various things.
They work hard, tractors, don't they?
They do, and it doesn't seem to get much love parked out there. It still goes. We've got a problem with the hydraulics at the moment, so it's just waiting for some inspiration.
So this is the site of an old lime kiln that used to be here on the farm back in Alice's day or before that. If you have a look inside the shed, you can still see the chimney.
This is an old wooden shed with a rusty tin roof. It's built into the cliff.
Yeah. So if you look up there, you'll see where the fire goes.
Yes.
And right up on the limestone hill behind there, they would take the rocks and crush them and burn them to make lime.
That could then be used on roads, helping to make the road harder, possibly also used as a fertiliser, but I know it was used on roads.
Now we've come into a paddock where you've got several relaxed looking calves.
Yes, these are my foster calves. There's about 8 of these big ones. They were born from our Jersey cows, and this is the bull over here. He's the lowline Angus. He's supposed to be the father of all of these because we sent him to a local dairy farm last year to put over the cows after they'd had the AI, and then this spring he picked out the ones that looked like they were lowline Angus Jersey cross, and we got them back, and we just raised them on our herd of 8 dairy cows. So the dairy cows come into the cow shed every morning, and I let the calves in and they just go for it, and it's all very peaceful mostly.
Beyond the bull is another paddock, and then basically we can see the ocean.
Yes.
This cattle shed here must have one of the best views in Golden Bay.
Yeah, I would agree. Haven't seen anywhere better.
The cow shed is the main hub of the farm. If you want to know anything, you turn up at the cow shed. Yes. And Mum will be there. She invariably turns up in the morning sometime to make sure we're doing everything properly. And then various other people will come and go. And it's the place to find out what's happening.
Yes. And so how old are your folks?
Dad is 82.
92.
And Mum is 87. Is that right, Jonathan? Got that right?
Gosh, and she still comes up in the morning just to make sure you're doing everything right.
Well, she has her own little flock of chooks that she looks after, and she gives me all the advice for raising calves, because she raised calves for 20 years.
Now I can see a huge compost heap on the other side of the paddock. What are you making that with?
Yeah, well, you'll see there's 3 piles there. On the very left, there's a pile of chip mulch, which I created a few days ago. Around the farm, we've got plenty of trees that we don't need or want. It's a matter of choosing the ones that we don't want. They're growing in the wrong place or they're the wrong kind, and pushing it through my chipper. And so I can feed anything up to 120 millimetre diameter into that. So that's combined with any of the animal waste that we have. Sometimes you'll get one of our older animals that will die of old age, or the waste that comes as part of our abattoir process. So we create a bed of the chip to put that animal waste on, and then we cover it up, and we just leave that for a year before it's ready to use somewhere. So I've got a small block of avocado trees which we're currently applying the finished compost, and the only thing that they enjoy more is the chicken manure.
Rose, where are your chickens?
So the chickens, there's a chicken house on the other side, and there's one further up behind the house, and they're on the edge of the bush and the edge of the paddocks. So I've discovered that the chooks really prefer to be under trees. They like to go out in the pasture, but they're happy under the trees. So that's why I've ended up parking my chook homes in those positions. And there's a lot of other spots around the farm where I'd like to increase the number of chook houses that I have.
And are the eggs sold under your Ellis Creek farm brand?
Yes, yeah. So we sell them on our website and at the market.
At the market in Takaka?
In Takaka and in Nelson.
What's that sound we can hear?
That's our hydro scheme. So we've got a Pelton wheel which is generating electricity for the farm. So we're completely off-grid.
And this runs off Ellis Creek?
Yes. The intake is about 400 or 500 metres up the valley. So we have a head of about 70 metres feeding down here to the Pelton wheel.
Now we've come down to the farmyard, and this is where you've got the abattoir, Rose.
Yes.
Has this been a game changer for your business?
Yes. When we started, there was only one small abattoir that was happy to take our animals and give us the meat back. Most places will buy the animal and that's it.
And that's...
You can't get the meat back. But there were constraints on that because there was only one day that was suitable for them to kill on, and it was often at the beginning of a week, and we had to tie it in with transport so that the animals arrived at the right time, and we were only sending 4 or so at a time, and you can't fill a truck with 4 animals, so we had to fit in with another truck that was going down with animals from Golden Bay.
Sounds very complicated.
It was very complicated, and often it fell through.
Mm. And behind the abattoir is the chiller.
Yep, we only just recently built the chiller on the farm to be able to have the meat on our farm. So now we're able to sell from the farm.
Oh, so you'd like to have a farm shop?
Yes, yeah.
When would you like to kickstart that idea off?
Well, we already have the ability for people to buy online and then they come to the farm to pick it up. We will probably do it when it becomes a little bit more busy because it will need somebody to man the stall. Yeah.
I think people would love that, to come to where the meat is from.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that we can offer people is the knowledge of where the meat they're coming from and how it's been farmed.
Well, let's go and look in the chiller to see what's hanging.
See what's hanging. So after it's killed, it comes into here where it's chilled, and then it goes to Georgie's,
And Georgie is the local butcher just down the road?
Yes, yep. Her parents own one of the farms along the reef, the second one along from us, sheep farmers. And so she's a home kill butcher and she's a dual butcher.
Georgie Morletta has converted a farm building on her parents' farm into a commercial butchery. She tells me how and why she took this career path.
So I was a Gateway student, and I actually did Gateway with Wayne and Aki Packard and on the farm down the road because I wanted to be a farmer. And I used to go hunting with Dad, and he was like, "Oh, why don't you try and see if you can learn some butchery?" And I started Gateway at the Fresh Choice down here, yeah. And I was real keen to do the apprenticeship because you learn on the job. And
Yes, and you get paid, I guess, as well.
Yeah, that's right, yeah, it's cool. And then I found a French butcher in Nelson that wanted an apprentice, so I went over there for my apprenticeship, yeah, and that was really probably where I got quite passionate about the retail side of it.
Yes.
Then I learnt the home kill side of it from our family friend Slater, yeah.
Gosh, so you've done the whole butchery apprenticeship thing, and now you can do home kill as well?
Yeah, yep. I really like the paddock to plate style stuff, so that's why I like to do the whole lot, you know, like I like to be able to go out and kill for customers and then cut it all up exactly how they want it and produce small goods. Yeah.
And you're a bit tired because you were working last night.
Yeah, at the local Fonterra dairy factory, yep.
Do you work there, part-time?
It's not part-time, it's actually full-time, but we do shift work, so I do 2 days, 2 nights, 4 off mostly, so, you know, in that 4 days off, it gives me enough time to do the butchery.
And you've also got an apprentice called Maddie, is that right?
Yeah, yep.
How did that come about?
Oh, so she did a similar line to get to her apprenticeship as me, so I worked with her dad at the factory, and that's how I met her, and she started doing Gateway and work experience with me, and then later she's in her second year of her apprenticeship now, yeah.
Can we have a quick look on?
Yeah, let's have a look. Jonathan shows me some meaty carcasses waiting to be processed by Georgie.
So there's 4 hoggets there and 1 cattle beast. And the carcasses for the beef are all hung for 10 days.
Why do you do that?
Just to age them. You get a better flavour.
And how often do you ship your orders off around the South Island?
Every week. So Georgie will process the animals at a certain time in the week, and then we will put the meat up on the website when we know what sizes we've got, and then I'll send out an email so our customers who are regular will know that the meat's up there, and then they very quickly get in there to try and get all the bits that they love the best. And the orders come through on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and I usually pack Tuesday afternoon, and then we deliver on a Wednesday.
We are on the other side of Ellis Creek and walking up a stony track towards a secluded paddock, and it looks like your chickens here have the run of the land.
They do. They can go where they wish. This is the totara flock. So he's looking behind, there's the grove of totaras that were planted by my grandfather. I think they were planted for fence posts. They make good fence posts, but at the moment they're just providing a haven for the chooks.
Yeah, they can scratch away.
They love it.
Now, that noise we can hear are 2 Pitt Island sheep.
Yes, they're twins. They got disturbed when they were just born. The mother got disturbed and she decided that she couldn't keep them, so we've been raising them here in our little orchard.
And all in all, Rose, how are things going? Are you doing okay financially?
We're on a journey, really, and we've come a long way, and there's still a long way that we want to go. So I think my long-term goal is to have a business structure working on the farm that has the ability to have more ventures built on top of it. So to have a brand that sells our meat and sells our eggs and has the ability for other people in the next generation who want to come along and live on the farm to be able to say, all right, well, I'd actually like to use perhaps the skins from the animals and get into leather, or I would like to use the fat and make skin creams, or I'd like to bring in some bees and make honey. You know, if we can build a foundation that is successful, then there's more ability for other people to come in and be a part of the community.
And we'd like to see a few more little accommodation places dotted in some of the beautiful spots that have beautiful views.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, this is literally a priceless view from where we're standing that the chickens have. What's that bit of land in the distance there beyond the bay?
Oh, that's Farewell Spit, and you'll be able to see the lighthouse at night time if you happen to be here collecting eggs at night time, or shutting the chooks up, or taking broody chooks off the nest, and all the other things you need to do at night.
Rose Williams ending that story from Alice Creek Farm in Golden Bay. Cosmo was also talking to Rose's brother, Jonathan Thorpe, and butcher Georgie Milletta. There are photos of the farm on the RNZ website. Go to rnz.co.nz/countrylife.
Well, that's it for Country Life this week. It's great to hear from you. You can contact us at country@rnz.co.nz.
And you can follow and listen to Country Life wherever you get your podcasts.
You can read more and listen again to the stories you've heard by checking out the episode notes or heading to rnz.co.nz/countrylife. The stories today were produced and presented by Cosmo Kentish-Barnes, Janina Schwanneker and me, Sally Round.
In the studio production team today, David Knowles and William Saunders. From me, Duncan Smith, bye for now.
Catch you next time.